there's a cylindric pump. The borehole has a cylindrical pump at the very bottom, and then that pump is attached to a series of pipes to come to the top, and then you pump the lever. And I've even seen some of these where the cylindrical pump was broken. They installed it with a broken, I mean, it's just, again, we're looking at corruption, obviously, but we're also looking at, I guess it's just, the wells are very difficult because it's hard to find in some of these villages even a place where you can get water, just because there's granite everywhere. There's no good place to drill where you're going to hit water. And the guy that I'm working with right now, I just love him. I love him. I love him. He's a geologist, and he just studies, like, I'll tell him my village. He goes there. This is like his thing. And he gets out of his car, his truck or whatever, and he just bolts. He's looking for the stones that will tell him where he can find the water. And I've watched him do this. And one time he said, I don't know where I'm going to get this water because everywhere I look is granite, and granite is the enemy of water. Where you find granite, you're not going to get water. And he found this one spot, and he said, this is the spot. There's water here. I can find it. And all of these people were like, I don't think so. I don't think so. And he found this water. He got the water. And when we do our contracts, he said, every village, I won't leave that village unless I give them water. And it's just night and day different than all these people I was working with before him. His parents are Zimbabwean. He was raised in Zambia. He just, I think he actually grew up in a village because he has an affinity to the village, and he can't handle going there with the big drill rig and drilling a dry hole and pocketing the money and leaving. He's not like that. So, I mean, these are, I'm just telling you some of the challenges. Wow. I think that was what you asked for.
We live in a community in Arizona, which is dry. There are, I guess, a couple of large underground water resources in the area that are being used up rapidly. And so the city we live in, starting 100 years ago, started building lakes to hold water, runoff water. And then they started systems 20 or 30 years ago to pump excess water down back into the aquifer. And so we have, in our immediate area, we have some wonderful little lakes. And each one now is feeding the aquifer. And they had passed a law that said that they had to guarantee at least 100 years of supply before they could build a subdivision. Well, of course, the realtors and all the guys that were making profit off of subdivisions changed the laws, and now that's taken away. So we have about 14,000 or more new homes being built, all based on inadequate water supplies and no real plans to solve the water issues that are going to be here in this area 50 years from now. So it's this political corruption and all that you talk about is just on a different scale here. And gradually the government of the people is supposed to take care of that and pass laws that say you cannot build a new home or start a new subdivision until you can guarantee that it will have a water supply that goes on for centuries if necessary. But we're not at that stage yet. We've been there, but it's been canceled. So it is possible to collect water from rain, and when you do have water, and the drought is really serious here. But right now our lakes are full. They're pumping the water back into the aquifer, purifying it and pumping it. And so that's extending the life of the aquifers. And there is a success story here. It's just that there are two factions working against each other. One is really trying to solve the problem, and the other is trying to get around the problem to make a profit. So,
Heather, I think you need water well police to watch over those drilling wells.
Or I am the police.
I know, but you gotta hire some big guys, you know.
I know. I
Scary
can't
guys.
get burnt out. I can't.
You know,
Um,
use the equivalent of Guido in Sierra Leone.
Ed, what you're talking about is such an important point, and I'm glad that you brought it up. I'm really glad that you brought it up. Is it going to get to a point where it gets so bad that politics can't, that we can't, that it can't be political and monetarily based, and that we're, you know, I mean, I don't know how to put it. Like, will the water situation ever get to a point where it can't be manipulated the way that it's being politically or monetarily?
it sounds like that's the way it is in a lot of Africa, South Sahara. You know, it has gotten to a point where people are dying. And
Yes,
until governments are representing the people rather than the big corporations or the Chinese coming in or whoever it is, and demand that there are policing, that there's accountability,
right,
more people are going to die. It's really an issue that is on the governmental level, but it
exactly.
has to be led by people who understand the problem. So,
Well, I think Heather's been touching on this point, that it's the people that have to rise up in whatever way they can to influence the government, because, you know, Ed, as you drew the picture of what's going on around where you live, the government without some restraints is going to be in cahoots, I guess, in the case you're talking about with the real estate developers. How many was it? 15,000? I forget how many.
14,000 new homes in 14,400 new homes in one development.
Yeah, I mean, just my God, I mean, just think of the economic, you know, benefit that they can brag about from all the new construction. I think this is maybe a little tangential, but when Heather was talking about Zambia drying up and that incredible quote she told us about their drying up and dying, was that it? I just want to read this about the largest reservoir in the United States, which is Lake Mead, which is a reservoir of the Colorado River where Hoover Dam is. And they say that prolonged drought and overallocation have dramatically reduced the amount of water in the Colorado River and the stored water in Lake Mead and Lake Powell. They are the largest reservoirs in the US and are essential to the management of the Colorado River Basin, which, by the way, what feeds the cities of Denver, Phoenix, Los Angeles, Las Vegas, and all the surrounding agricultural land, in addition to other places like in Mexico, right?
Yeah.
And then they say that they are the largest reservoirs and and they're saying we are experiencing the driest conditions in the last 1,200 years. So how long can all this finagling go on? I mean, I know that recently they hashed out some new agreements about water allocation for this area. But I think, from my understanding of what they came to, all the politicians and agencies that were involved with water rights that serve California, Nevada, Arizona, Colorado, Mexico, some parts of Mexico, etc., that, you know, it came to a very similar point that Ed just, you know, shed light on, which is they're very hesitant to implement the steps that need to be taken because it's politically tough to do. So we're kind of just keep kicking the can into the future. And you know what? The future is here. I mean, it's not like we didn't know, at least in this part of the world, that we're drying up. I mean, there have been people, you know, researchers, environmentalists, you know, have been behind the megaphone trying to, you know, get attention to the fact we don't have unlimited resource here. I know, for example, Las Vegas had to drill a hole and install, I think it was one of the largest engineering projects in history, a new system to bring water from, I think it's Lake Mead where they get their water,
Mhm.
because there are other two straws that they had built decades ago no longer reach the lake because the lake's drying up. So they had to go deeper, you know, to get the water out. And that, I think recently they just completed that project. And if they had, I think they wouldn't be getting water to the city of Las Vegas. So I don't know. I mean, what Heather's dealing with, you know, is, I don't even know the word for it, obviously extremely tough. And we're talking about perhaps drilling water wells and oil rig companies or people cheating on it. And yet in this country, you know, we're digging not a water well, but what do you call that aquifer that they just, you know, completed to Lake Mead from Las Vegas. I mean, it's the same problem on a different scale, I guess. And,
Exactly.
you know, facing the same realities of trying to deal with economic interests and politicians that are interested in one thing probably, which is getting reelected, and
Yeah.
not so much at this impending disaster, which is, you know, at our, you know, doorsteps. Hope I'm not
I
being
think-
too dramatic, but I think that's unfortunately, you know, a fairly true statement.
What you're doing, though, is getting people to talk about it, which is the
Yeah.
first time perhaps that they've even heard the argument and begin to put human values to it. And political systems are great, aren't they? But only if they serve the people that they're supposed to be serving. So,
You know, I heard this interview with a woman who was a water manager in Tucson, like I had mentioned earlier, that, you know, Tucson had made some dramatic changes to how they allocate water and what they allow, especially for outdoor watering. And she was a water manager, and after they had implemented the system, you know, they changed the law, and what they did also was they raised the price of water.
mhm.
You know, I think that's one big step they took. They raised the price of water in Tucson. And guess what? Her and her colleague got impeached.
Yeah.
Jobs. They were impeached. And she says, you know, she doesn't really regret it. She looks back on it and she's on to a new job now, I think, in city management, some other aspect of city management. But she said she's afraid that, you know, if other water managers around the country look at her experience, they're gonna, you know, be unwilling to do what she and her colleagues were willing to do, which is raise the price of water and taking other measures that are unpopular. So that's what we're facing in terms of at least the places that are drying out. I don't know, other places, like I had said before, perhaps are getting too much water as the climate changes. But at least here in the Southwest, which, and you know, the agriculture in this part of the world, our country, I mean, I think it produces a lot of the produce that are in, you know, our grocery stores everywhere on the East Coast, and certainly in, you know, here in the Southwest. But, you know, it's kind of a bread basket, if that's the word for it. A produce basket maybe is more appropriate for a lot of the country. And, you know, a lot of these agricultural, that's a tough situation too, because a lot of these farms and ranches, you know, have water rights that were allocated, you know, decades or century ago. I don't know how long ago. And these folks are, you know, it's like change is hard. They're not so easily willing to change what they're doing, because they have the allocation. Some of them are family farms, you know, their parents and grandparents and great grandparents have been doing this forever, and they want their kids to continue. And I guess they have the legal right based on prior, agreements to continue perhaps, growing crops that are not the most efficient for the reality we're looking at today. So this is a really tough problem. And I guess, I don't know if everybody's come up, there certainly isn't a magic bullet, let's put it that way. At least none that I've heard of.
You can see why the Supreme Court picked on the Navajo.
Yeah,
They get the least resistance
Oh my,
instead of picking on the real causes of
Yeah.
the problem.
yeah, it's a shame, right? Well, the Navajo have been, their access to water has been extraordinarily difficult. That's, over time, since they, traditionally, the Colorado River, was what was utilized obviously by, the native peoples of the area. And they haven't been invited to a seat at the table as these decisions have been made, I think, for the most part, although today, finally, I think, they're exercising their rights and they're much stronger politically than they were in the past. So hopefully, it will continue and they'll, be able to get a more fair allocation and have more say-so in how their traditional water source is being utilized.
We hope so.
Kind of brings to mind too, was something that Heather was talking about, because I heard this Native American individual, I think he's a Navajo, and he was talking about the spiritual ties to water. And, I think Heather was kind of touching on some of that earlier. And, how their religion and their whole society is tied not only, in the ways we've been discussing, which is for more survival needs, but more spiritually tied, to the river, to the sources of water. And that's a very interesting aspect of this conversation as well, I think.
well, and then that's a really interesting thing if you think about, like, are we drying up? Like, are we are water, and then the water on the planet is getting harder and harder for us to be with, right? It's harder to get water to drink, all this political stuff that you and Ed have touched upon, like all this corrupt garbage. And what is the implication of that? Again, it almost I don't know how you want to say, a spiritual or cosmic level of are we drying out? Are we getting further and further away from our higher and our deeper selves as the planet becomes less and less able to host us? Because we've lost our connection to it. So why would we be here?
Well, you were talking about that before. You're talking about our connection to nature, right?
Right. That's it. I mean, to me, I don't do much in life that I don't have a connection to. I don't eat food that I don't like the taste of. I want to connect with all things. Food, people, grass, birds, So if we don't want to connect with our planet anymore, what's the purpose? Why should we be here? Do you see what I'm saying? It doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't nature work that way? Whole areas, people just starve out. They aren't able to support life, so life can't live there, like the Sahara Desert. Think of the great civilizations that were there one time. And
yeah. Oh,
is that a reality?
Ed, Radiance and I wanted to tell you this. If you look at like photos or things like of ancient Egypt, or even not even ancient Egypt, but Egypt previously, the pyramids had water near them.
Yes.
You start thinking about that. Oh, wow. Look at how the water on the planet has shifted even in recorded time,
Mhm.
you know? Like just what you're saying, some of, now it's a desert, but how long ago was there water just out, just near to Sphinx?
Yeah.
It's really fascinating. It's really
Really is.
fascinating.
And if the people don't want to die, they migrate. And then they're
Right.
in somebody else's territory and they don't want them there because their shortage of resources and water. And so we have another turmoil going on within the world that we human beings as a species just don't seem able to handle. Maybe AI will come along and super AI will handle it for us. I don't know.
I'm not sure when I put my eggs in that basket, but maybe. Maybe.
I'm
I'll
gonna
get
make,
on that right away, Heather, for you.
yeah, Larry, can you organize for AI to do these water wells in Zambia and Sierra Leone for
Absolutely.
me? Do it.
It'll mainstream everything. Uh,
Got a
not
patent
to
that,
change the
Larry.
subject,
Sure you
Heather,
patent that.
but excuse me, Jeff, just 1 second. I have to go here in a minute.
Yeah, sure.
Heather, if you need any help, I don't know if you have everything backed up or not, from the laptop that you lost last night. But if you need any additional help, just let me know.
Thank you so much. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Yeah,
I-
I just don't want to see you suffer over there too much.
Hmm.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm glad you were here because this whole thing came up because of that discussion we had.
I know. Yeah, tell Radiance to keep a pair of shears around her all the time so she can snap off those fingers. I don't know why you didn't have. Why did you have your stuff near the window like that? Did they break the bars on there or what?
Larry, if you saw the distance that the stuff was from the window, you would be shocked. So, Crystal and Joe, Susan and Rachel, Ed, I had emailed my mother and Jeff and Larry before this and told them that these two guys helped me the entire day to get my daughter's laptop to work with a phone that would get a hotspot to get internet connection so that we could have this call. Because in the middle of the night last night, these people, I think it was probably 2 or 3 men, they found a way to get our window open, and we have burglar bars, and they probably had a stick and a net, and from a very far distance managed to get our laptop camera, phone, and my headlamp. And I still don't understand how they got it from the ground up to the window level. We've had police over here the whole day. There's been people here, and then in and out. These two guys were trying to get this phone unlocked, because in the States, you have to unlock them when you take them internationally. They had to get it unlocked, and they kept coming and going, and they knew how important it was, that we had this call. It was just so sweet. They were so sweet. But Larry, thank you for that. It would be so easy for me to blame myself, but I don't think it was anything like the distance from the window to where they took the stuff was really far.
Right.
It scares me more than anything. It just scared me. And Radiance is still not
Yeah.
feeling great.
I don't blame either one of you. It's horrible. Horrible.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so if you I hope you had some stuff backed up and your other computers will work okay for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you still using your existing email, or you have to change that too?
No, my mom will help me and we'll get that all figured out. Yeah.
Okay.
It'll be.
Right.
Yep.
Well, I've
Yeah.
got to go. Bye, everybody.
Bye,
Thank
Larry.
you. Thank you.
Great
for
to
being
meet
here.
you. Good meeting you. Well, Heather, I mean, I have to say, given that you shared what happened last night, I mean, we all know that you're facing a tough environment there. Not that we couldn't get robbed in this country, but I think that what happened to you just illustrates, what you're up against and what you're facing as you do this very important work.
It, Radiance was saying, like, Mom, a year from now, we're not even going to care about the laptop and the
Sure.
phone.
That's
I'm sure we'll still care about the camera, or maybe, but it's more just that
Mhm.
that violation.
Of course.
Because this is the first time, even for me, that I've been robbed inside my house while I was there, and it was my bedroom.
Wow.
That's what messes with me, is like that they were doing that while I was sleeping in my bed with my daughter. I just, it disturbed me. I'm disturbed.
Well,
I haven't
it's
eaten well,
understandable. I think we all can empathize, and I'm sure we all wish you the best in dealing with this. I mean,
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I hope,
Thank you.
would you feel like you mentioned the police were there? I have no concept of how helpful the police are. In
The
this
police, okay. The police, like, so what they did is they were like outraged. Oh, the one guy, the head of the whole little town, the head, he's like on my speed dial. I called him at 4:20 in the morning,
Well,
and he was like outraged. So he sent a vehicle over here,
mhm.
and these guys like storm into my house, and I show them everything because the thieves, they left tons of fingerprints on the windows. They left muddy footprints outside.
Mm.
They left, but we don't have any forensic stuff here.
Mm.
We don't have any way, like in the States, it's like they could have found these guys, like.
Right.
So these like all these police are like in my bedroom, and I've got like my underwear drying. Because I hadn't planned for this event.
Right.
And
Right.
they were like, and they just like all yell at each other about it. Like they speak Creole, which is like broken English, and they're like, he come here for help. Look what they do to her. And they're like all yelling, but they're all like saying the exact same thing, which is like, she's come here to help us.
Yeah.
Now look what these thieves have done to her.
Right.
And so then they said, do you have anyone that you suspect? And I said, there's very specifically one person that I suspect. There's a couple people that I very much suspect.
Really?
And they all live very close by.
Huh.
So they like go to this guy's house, and the sun is just like starting to come up. And they, in the States, you'd need a warrant, you'd need all this stuff. And they're like, oh, we want to come in here. Like, let me in here. And like the mom is out in the yard, like with her little like wrap on. And we're like in this guy's house. And I told Radiance was here. This was the part of the day that I cried, because we're like going through this guy's stuff. And it was just like so horrible. It was just such a weird experience of like, this isn't right, but yet I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it. And then there was like a little guy walking on this footpath with a backpack, and the police were like, come here. And the guy was like, oh, and they're like, show me what's in the bag. They unzipped the little backpack, and there's like a plate with a spoon in the one compartment, and then the other compartment was like a little notebook. I'm like, this is just so Africa, like what people carry around as like their little food dish.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just the day has broken my heart.
Oh my gosh.
It's been a very,
Well,
But
you're
so that's-
amazingly composed tonight, this evening. I don't think other people that hadn't heard about it would even know, right, Ed or Joe, or if you
No.
guys had any clue that she went through this circumstance last night. She didn't sleep. You didn't sleep at all, right? I mean, you were up almost the whole night dealing with this.
it might not be a story that I write about in my newsletter. How's that?
Okay.
I'm probably not going to write about this
All
one.
right. Well, I get that.
Okay, we've got to go pretty quick.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
I want to say love to Radiant and hope she's writing and doing a lot of good things.
We were so happy that you and Joe, that you guys were on this call. And Joe, you still like your earrings, right? We're already hoping the next time we're home that we can do another camping trip or come visit you guys. Jeff and I were thinking we could do a road trip and come visit you guys.
Good,
Yeah.
Planning
Good
ahead.
luck. We want to see you.
great.
Sounds great.
Well, good seeing you both on Zoom. Anyway,
Yeah. Good seeing you all and meeting you all. And I think it's the right way to go. Just keep getting information out there and
Yeah.
talk about the responsibility of government.
well, Ed, I know you guys got to drop out. That please do. I know you got other plans, but I mean, I'm curious. Any feedback on this format? You know, the discussion format. Maybe we can, get back to that at some point.
Okay,
And continuing this idea, the topic of the weight of water. Circling back to it at some point. We'll keep in touch on it.
okay, Jeff.
All right. You guys have a great evening.
You
All right.
too.
So,
So. Anybody else want to share something before I guess we sign off, or Heather, you have more thoughts to offer people?
No, I mean, what thoughts and what ideas and what does everyone else have to say?
If they care to share. Don't put anybody on the spot, but anybody that wants to say something, I mean, just reflecting on this whole discussion. Crystal, I mean, you're on mute, I think. Crystal, here we go.
Well, Heather knows that my commitment is to stop the extinction of elephants. They're dying like flies because of the drought. So my mission is to build water sources for elephants.
Mhm.
And listening to Heather has made me realize this is not going to be an easy task.
Right.
It is not going to be an easy task. Oh my God. So I'm really glad to get that bit of awakening, that I'll be fighting it till my grave, really.
Good.
That's an admirable mission you have, Crystal.
Yeah, what's really exciting is that the scientists are even saying now, we need elephants to save the planet.
Mhm.
And so I was scheduled to do a talk, and I was, for me, the issue is who elephants are. They are so highly evolved, it's off the scale. And the local indigenous people I worked with in Kenya, in and out for 10 years, they say if elephants go extinct, human beings will lose their soul and go crazy. And so I personally just can give a 2-hour talk on who elephants are. And I found people don't want to hear it.
Mhm.
They ask me, what's in it for us?
Mhm.
So it was like, I mean, it was just made me cry because
Yeah.
it's so human supremacism.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Human supremacism that if it doesn't give me something, I don't give a shit, you know?
Mhm.
And so I was just, how am I going to raise money? This attitude, is so big. And then in the last month, I started getting these emails of 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 scientists, articles of scientists talking how they need the elephants to save the planet. And it was like, oh wow, well now I can shift and give this reason, since they're not going to give a shit that elephants are worthy of being on the planet. And so now I'm really excited because I can back it up with scientists this and scientists this, and but this has been very enlightening to me to hear Heather, because it made me realize how difficult it's going to be.
Jeff,
So-
Crystal you should do one of the next talk, or maybe the next one, or at whatever point in time should be about the elephants, and it should be Crystal teaching us.
Well, that's
That would be amazing. That would be
right. I
amazing.
mean, well, like I said, this is the first in the series of the weight of water, and I wasn't thinking about elephants when I said earlier that this topic is, touching all of us, whether we want to acknowledge it or not in terms of climate change. But it's fascinating that Crystal brought this issue up. And I think, I can speak for the other folks with the networking center that we collaborate with, but I'm sure we'd love to have Crystal, as part of this series, if that's something that she wants to do. I think you have to
Right.
ask her, not me. But we can, get back to
Because,
that. Yes.
Everything you're saying is just like slam dunk, slam dunk, slam dunk. Like this idea that human beings are the supreme life form on the planet is the reason that we're all going to go extinct. Right. So
Yeah.
then us putting ourselves above elephants or giraffes, or all, us putting ourselves above animals, insects, marine life, whales, whatever. It's another form of our narcissism and our self-destruction. And the fact that people are blowing you off, not wanting to hear anything you have to say, not having an open mind to learn, not having the humility to know that they don't know, is so sad and pathetic, but I'm not surprised. So you having scientist X, Y, or Z back you up, I'm so glad the universe sent you those articles or whatever. So now you can cite the truth, even though you were already saying it, but because these people won't believe in anything that isn't science-based, there you've got your article. But I feel like, of course, it's going to be difficult. And I'm sure that I even told you that in some of these emails you and I have shared, but it will be difficult, but you have to do it. It's your mission. It's your,
It is
it's
really
your passion.
my,
It's you have to do it. It's
Yeah.
you.
I have no doubt it's my mission to
Mhm.
be the voice of
Mhm.
elephants who have no voice and no seat at the table of those deciding their fate. Yeah.
Well, if we can help you magnify that voice, let us know, please.
Yeah. I need your help.
Well, Jeff, I think this would be a fascinating and incredible topic.
Sure, I concur wholeheartedly. I heard a story, I think maybe it was on NPR. I wish I could remember it more clearly, but they were talking about human elephant interactions. I forget which country in Africa, And they were, there was I think a not-for-profit organization that was helping to educate the local folks who were interacting with the elephants to better understand what the behavior of the elephants that they were encountering really was all about, because the people that, were interacting with the elephants were very, negative about their being in the same space for obvious reasons. I guess they were competing for water and the elephants were destructive. And it's kind of like, I'm learning to train my big puppy and I don't understand, I'm learning to understand his body language and I'm learning to understand, his habits, because I've never had a puppy before. And maybe it's a stretch, but I think it was a similar point that was being made in the story that I heard, which is that the people, their attitudes towards the elephants were changed through this educational outreach. That much I can remember of the story, but it stuck in my brain, and certainly comes to the forefront hearing what Crystal is, her, what your passion is about. And so maybe there is hope, that we can educate and bring, both in the terms of water, other issues we were speaking about, but certainly in terms of our interactions with nature, and in this case with elephants specifically.
Well, I'll share with you that I worked in Kenya
Mhm.
for 10 years with the local people on elephants.
Mhm.
So we tried different things and we came to the conclusion education is the most important,
Mhm.
because the typical Kenyan see elephant, especially the farmers, see them as giant rodents.
Yeah.
But so, wow, when we were, I traveled around the country with my multimedia presentation that was all battery powered, and it would change people. Even the farmers would get up at the end of it and stand up and make a public vow that they would never hurt an elephant.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it was, I lived for that. And so, but the water issue is, is a recent issue. So that the
Mhm.
two ways to save the elephants is, one, provide them with water sources,
Yeah.
and two, is educate people about their value.
Mhm. Mhm.
They are stunningly brilliant.
Mhm.
They have huge empathic hearts. They shed tears when they're sad. The indigenous Maasai say that elephants are humans
Mhm.
in a different form.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
There's that
Probably a
spiritual
higher
connection.
form.
yeah, a higher form. Yeah.
I don't know that human beings are willing, I don't know if they're prepared, if we are prepared to accept that animals ultimately are a higher form. If we've been taught, I don't know why. It's like you unlearning something that, like, we're above animals. I think that's part of the, like, meat eating tradition, as like we have the power to kill and eat you. But that we've been taught, like, this is ingrained in us somehow, that animals are beneath us. Where did that come from? Where did that come from? And where would we be as a humanity if we had valued animals as our equals?
Yeah, well, these are really tough questions.
But think about, these are the discussions I have with Radiance, because this is all that she thinks about and talks about, because she firmly believes, like, why aren't we, like, we should be learning from the animals. Like,
For the folks here that don't know Radiance, she's how old now?
She's 13.
Okay, so just so, people that don't know her, that give us.
Sorry, my daughter.
Get a sense
Yes.
for your
Yes,
your daughter.
I know her and I love her.
All right. Now,
She loves
Rachel
you
and
too.
Susan on the call here, maybe, don't. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, have you read oh, I forget his name, Derek Jensen's book, The Myth of Human Supremacy.
Hmm. I
The
have-
myth,
The
The
myth,
myth?
the myth of human supremacy. Derek Jensen. It is powerful. It is really powerful. I love it.
the myth of
well,
we did it, we've done it to ourselves with our own ego. You know, it's our own creation, it's our own manifestation of belief, and it's so deeply ingrained in
It
our
really is deeply
humanity.
ingrained. Yeah.
well,
Like
yeah,
people not interested in hearing my talk about elephants unless it applied to them.
So then how do you,
Yeah, I have to tell you something funny. I tell my friends everything alive has a purpose. And so this friend was telling me that he had these ticks, and you know, they were really dangerous, and you know, they were eating him up, and so he said he couldn't find a good reason for the ticks, and he was telling me that they kill people. So I said, maybe that's their function, to get rid of us. That's their sacred purpose, get rid of the human being.
well, and if you think
maybe there's a space in between where we can, you know, be more thoughtful about nature and not have to, you know, eliminate the human species. Hopefully there's a ground somewhere in between. I just wonder, I don't know if we have just a few minutes, and I don't know if Rachel or Susan want to say anything, or we want to just wrap up the other talk in some fashion.
I'm here instead of Susan. This is David. For some reason, our camera's missing.
What? It's hard to hear you, David.
Can you hear me?
Yes, but you're a little faint.
Okay, no, I've only joined recently, and we had dinner and other things. So we've been on and off, but I'm just carrying the very last conversation here. I totally agree with what Heather, what you just said about animals. Totally agree with you. Both our daughters are vegans, and that's one of the reasons. So when Rachel is on the call right now, she can explain why she's a vegan.
Is she still?
Maybe she left the room, but anyway, we have another daughter that's put on many vegetarian food festivals. Of course, Jeff and I have participated in those food festivals in New York.
By the way, this David's my brother, so you know.
Yeah, the one you cannot see is the brother of Jeff. All right.
It's going by the name of Susan.
I'm going by the name of Susan because I'm sitting at her computer.
Okay. So,
Well, I'm gonna take off, and it was really, really great to see you. And thank you, Jeff, for organizing this.
sure. Well, we'll get back to you about Heather's suggestion, having a episode or one of our, you know, talks on the weight of water. I guess that's kind of appropriate for an elephant, right? The weight of water is kind of.
Yeah, and
thank you so much.
yeah, don't worry, Jeff, that in that context, I won't be so spiteful, shall I say.
No worries. Good to meet you. Maybe we'll host it in person. If you're here in Denver, we'll have it in person and by Zoom. Okay. I see.
Bye-bye, dear Heather.
Bye. Mwah. We love you and thank you.
And tell Radiance I said hi.
I promise.
Oh, thanks, Jeff.
You're very welcome. Thanks for joining. So David, now that we
Thank
can
you,
see
Heather and Jeff.
here's Rachel. Are you on, Rachel? Hello?
Yeah, I was just saying thanks. I'm gonna jump off also, but it was
All right.
great hearing Heather's story. Thank you, Heather.
Rachel, thank you. Thank you.
Right. Well, David / Susan, anything else you wanted to say? Now that we can see you. You're muted, by the way. You're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah. We can see.
Yes.
All right. Okay.
Uh,
I'm sorry, I was out, I got home late from work and I missed most of it, but I think it's been recorded. Heather, what the part I did hear before we adjourned for dinner was your comments about the corruption in Zambia. I see a lot of that same corruption in Louisiana, by the way. Not as bad.
Right. Where does it end? I mean, no, I know it. That's what Jeff is always reminding me of, because I'll sit and just tell him some of these stories and things about life and issues in Africa, and he'll parallel them with things that go on in the United States. And it's like, yeah, where does it end? Where does it end? And what is all of this is getting to this point, and we're at this point right now. It's like a pinnacle moment. What are we really doing here? We have all of these systems that don't support us. We have like all of these governments, every government on the planet doesn't support, it doesn't, the whole function is to support its people, and it does the opposite. And all of this capitalistic, compromising humanity for money. And it's just sick and it's sad. And I don't know if this is like our really hard lesson that we all have to learn, or if this is like an opportunity to evolve. Like, okay, this is the low point. What is that saying about like an alcoholic or has to hit rock bottom before they'll ask for help? And maybe this is like where we're at, because I know what you're saying is so true. Like there is so much corruption in our own country,
Yeah, it's human nature. It's in fighting the dark side of human nature. It's very difficult. It's just almost, it's actually impossible. I think the only thing that can be done is people like you and Jeff counter the dark side that other people display in public, and that's the best we can do is take solace in the fact there are some good people who are willing to do a lot, and I think the best is that we're going to be able to expect at least in the foreseeable future. I don't know how you can. This kind of stuff goes, throughout our history. We've had this people who are only wanting to benefit themselves. I mean, that's why I say it's not going to change. It's not going to change.
Well, it's interesting. Hopefully there can be changes at some level, maybe not as fully as we would like. I suppose that's why, Heather and I and Daniel Charles, who was on the call earlier, originally kind of came up with this concept of presenting issues and ideas of importance. The first talk we had was about business leadership. It was, very differently focused, but be that as it may, I mean, creating a forum where maybe at least, like in this case, Heather's friend Crystal can, maybe, we can help her magnify her concerns and her mission. I mean, maybe it's a drop in the bucket, but it's a drop, I guess. So I think that's kind of the purpose of this format that we're still experimenting with, I guess, Heather, right? It's it's new for us, but to have these kind of discussions, I mean, we wanted this to be, somebody have it like today where Heather made a presentation, and then, circle back, and anybody who wants to participate either verbally or through chat, can do so. And then we can circle back to the topic later on at another time after people have thought about it. and maybe, tried some things in their own life and then come back and share their experience. That's what this, that's this concept at least. So,
Well, and sorry, is it
No.
Susan?
well, it's David.
David,
Well,
okay.
my name is David, actually. I'm the husband.
I know.
I'm at my wife's computer here.
No, I know. I was being facetious because you had introduced yourself and I forgot what your name was, and I was just
David.
Yeah, David. So David, it's so nice to meet you, first of all.
Oh, likewise, Heather.
Jeff, your brother Jeff is one of my best friends. And what I think would be phenomenal would be, and Jeff, this is just, take note, is if anyone participating in this would have a platform, their own like month or, however often we do this, where they bring their topic to discussion, like what do you want to, with Crystal with the elephants. But David, like what would be yours? And you present and let's all think about it and talk about it. And
Good question.
it's a drop in a bucket. Yeah.
Well, David
Sure.
mentioned that his daughters, my nieces, are both vegan, and one of his daughters, Sarah, prior to becoming a mom, I guess she still is to some extent, was running large vegetarian food festivals around the country. And well, I mean, I guess you brought that up because that's close to this issue of, water usage and relying on resources, because to say the very least, cattle use, just trying to, feed cattle, like Ed was talking about earlier. That David, if you were on when Ed Berger was.
I heard a little bit of that, yeah, but I've read that before, that the problem with the depletion of water in Lake Mead and the Colorado River is mostly about cattle.
Really,
It's not about providing water for the citizens of Phoenix or Denver or other cities, even providing water for them to water their lawns, let alone, just drinking water or whatever. That is a drop in the bucket compared to the amount of water used in agriculture to grow. I think alfalfa is such a water intensive plant, and alfalfa is what's used to feed cattle.
Right, exactly.
So it's if we could cut out the meat from our diet, even slightly, 10% less. My God, I mean, how hard could that be? There would be a heck of a lot more water in Lake Mead.
Right. Yeah. Well,
But we are omnivorous. We don't have to eat meat. We choose to do it because it tastes good.
Yeah.
And we can choose to make that sacrifice.
and we're it's even beyond that. I mean, the corporations that sell us packaged food do it in such a way that they play on our instincts, I guess, for fat, sugar, and salt, things that are not necessarily healthy for us, but over evolution, over the eons of time, at some point, our ancestors, needed the fat, perhaps the meat, in the ways that we don't today.
It's a high energy source. That's what it is.
Okay, right. So I mean, but anyway, I'm just saying the food corporations know how to exploit that, because we have that drive. Like Heather says, it tastes good. They know it tastes good. It may not be good for you. A potato chip, I love them, but they're not good for me. And they know how to package them in a way that makes me want to eat more and more and more and more and more and more. So that's an obvious point, but that's part of what's going on.
Well, and have you noticed, David, how old are your children that are vegan?
Well, one was on the call. That was Rachel Lewent, is my oldest daughter. She just turned 40.
Oh, okay. Okay.
She's 40, and the other one is a mom and was the one running. These are actually vegan food festivals. She called them vegetarian, but in fact, they were vegan, and that was part of what was being presented. That she had many interesting speakers, similar to you, Heather, who she and her partner brought in to give talks on all aspects of the vegan lifestyle. And they made a big point of the resources used to raise cattle and how much it is devastating to the environment, really. Anyway, she's 38. You asked the question. She's 38.
Well, because this is something I'm noticing too with my my nieces, my two nieces. One is, I would say she's 16 or 17, and then the other one is 14. And they sort of gave me the courage to stop eating meat. One of them is a vegan. No, they're both vegetarian, but they gave me that courage. It's so hard to change eating habits, but
I know.
it's like, okay, you know what? I would openly say that meat was my favorite food group. And because of my daughter and my two nieces, they all stopped eating meat. And now one of those nieces didn't ever like meat. So it's not, I'm not saying it isn't a sacrifice, but it's a different kind of sacrifice, like than it is for my daughter or the other niece who loved meat and gave it up. So I said, if these little ones, 13, 15, 16, if they can do this, I can do this. And it's just so amazing. Like, I really should have done it a lot sooner. It doesn't mean it all take away. Like, sometimes I'll smell meat and stuff on the street and I'm like, oh, that smells so good. But it's worth it to me to not put it in my mouth if it means that the earth is being protected and that an animal, like, if you think about the implications of eating meat, it's eating death, it's eating violence, it's eating pain and suffering. And you're putting that in your body. And
That's true.
you know,
Well, you were totally right. And this, I should say, you asked again the age of my daughters, but Sarah, my youngest, has been a vegan since the age of 13. She, for her bat mitzvah, we're Jewish. So she had a bat mitzvah, and this was at her bat mitzvah, she made the decision she was not going to eat meat again.
You know
Because
what?
her bat mitzvah was all about animal, shelter animals, and the whole theme was, adopt a dog, adopt a cat. She's 13 years old, so that was part of her project and then she devoted many hours during her time that she lived here, and we live in Shreveport, Louisiana. She and my wife would go down to the animal shelter and take care of the animals there, dogs mostly. But part of what she recognized is if she loves dogs, she loves cats, she loves all animals, how can she put meat in her mouth? Just like you just said, Heather. Because she realized at the age of 13, she realized there was something wrong, something terribly wrong about eating meat.
that is crazy that you even just use that exact example. My daughter's 13 and she said a very, very similar thing. She was talking about how, like, one of my sisters is like, she loves dogs, and so my daughter emailed her, it's her aunt, and they were discussing about the dog, and
Yeah.
she said, but if you love your dog so much, isn't it sort of strange that you would eat animals? Like that contradiction.
That's right.
Well,
And we
it's
know
true. Yeah.
So my wife is still doing a lot of volunteer for animal protection here in Shreveport, and she works for something called Robinson Rescue, which is a nonprofit that does neuter and spading of dogs and cats. And and she does a lot of these on weekend type of events for she would be at a table and pass out information, I don't know, other things she does to help raise money and spread the word about this neutering and spading organization here in this small southern town. She said that it was so amazing. They had a thank you dinner for all the volunteers. She's a volunteer. And they served meat. She says, can you believe it? Here we are working for an organization that is involved in, obviously its motive is to minimize the suffering of dogs and cats, right? Because overpopulation. And then for the banquet, they serving meat. She said, it's unbelievable, that they don't see the connection.
Speaking of dog, there's your dog running around.
You could be serving hamburgers and ribs for an organization that's all about animal rescue.
I had no idea.
Unbelievable. She just couldn't believe it. But this is the deep stuff. We're doing that. We do the best we can. We're not San Francisco. We're not Denver. So we have a few, this is our rescue dog, by the way. Here.
I noticed you were throwing, I was like, what? Like, cause you kept throwing, and then I realized that if you think about it on a larger scale, what you're saying, it's like America is a nation of essentially dog lovers.
Oh,
Every
yeah.
now and then you get cat lovers, like I love cats, but it's mostly like people really love dogs and they love their dog. And they
You're
all
right.
eat meat. They eat meat. Most people eat meat.
Yeah.
And so it's a total contradiction that I was living for 43 years that was made very well aware to me by my child and my nieces. And it's like, well, I'm so happy to be humbled by them. And I just think like sometimes it's really interesting to have been on both sides of something, like to have loved the taste of meat. Like I said, I feel like Jeff, every time we've gone out to eat, like I would get a burger,
No more.
Yeah.
Is it hard where you live, Heather, to be a vegetarian, or is it easier?
Oh, I can't even eat the food anymore because they like they cook rice and then they make, like I was talking about on the Zoom call, that like palm oil.
Yeah.
And then they cook it with like cassava leaf or potato leaf. It's delicious. Maybe throw some onion and pepper in there. It's divine. And then at the very tail end, they'll throw fish in there when the soup is bubbling and boiling. And the fish separates into all these little bits and pieces. For them, this is, heaven. But for a vegetarian, you can't pick all those bones and those little chunks out.
Yeah.
And it's like, I just can't even really eat the food. And then when I try to tell these people, like, we don't eat meat, they don't get it. They don't get it. Like, why? But I mean, it's definitely like, and I mean, this could be a topic for one of our,
Sure.
because it's a really important topic. It's really not.
It ties in, absolutely. One thing that's interesting, David, that Heather's daughter Radiance, age 13, she runs a cat rescue, doesn't she? Or she tries to help, right?
Yeah,
Shelter cats that are strays.
Yeah, it's called, her name is Radiance, and her program is called Radiant Street Beasts. And
Radiance what?
Here, I'll type it.
Radiant Street Beasts.
Oh, Street Beasts. Oh, okay, I heard.
Yeah. Okay. But she wants it to be for dogs also, because there's so many dogs and like dogs are abused and starved and stuff. But the reason that we've never included dogs is because we're not permanently in Zambia or permanently in Sierra Leone. We go to both countries. And a dog, like these cats that we've had, when I go back to Zambia in August, I won't have been there since 2021.
Oh,
And I'll go home and find my cats because that's how cats are. Like if you give them a home base, they would have hunted and done all this for themselves like over time. And when I come home, it's energetic. It's like some of them come right back. Some of them, it takes them some days. Some of them, it takes them a few weeks. They know when we're back. It's energy.
even after
It's
2
crazy.
years.
Yeah, well, I've been gone a lot longer than that. One time I was gone from Zambia for almost 4 years and I came back. I unlocked the door to my house. This kind of chokes me up. And my cat started meowing inside the house. Like she was waiting for me.
For 4 years.
Because, cats are psychic beings. They're energy
Oh my God.
vessels, which I
Well,
think is
Heather, wasn't somebody taking care of them though, while you guys were gone? Somebody,
no, not really. I mean,
Really?
what we do is we give somebody money and food, like a big sack of like pounded maize, and they boil it, and it's like their staple food in Shima. But we pretty much know that they use the money on themselves and eat whatever we leave.
Uh-huh.
So, and I mean, the cats fend for themselves, and most of the time when we leave and come back, there's more cats than when we left because they've reproduced. And so, we
Hey,
let,
you need a Robinson rescue there.
but it's also like survival of the fittest, and they don't they give birth a lot, but they also don't all survive. And so when we left, we had 17 cats. And sorry, this is a long tangent. The reason that she's never had dogs included in her program is because you can't leave a dog like that.
right.
No,
You can't.
not even
for 2
not even for
years.
3 days. Not even for 3 days.
As a matter of fact, I gotta walk my dog soon.
Oh, okay.
Dogs need
Yeah,
constant
Yeah,
attention
it's a
I know.
challenge.
and
And-
care. I mean, they give back so much in the love they give, and
Oh,
that
yeah.
we've always had dogs in our family. I mean, they're just marvelous companions, so patient and so grateful for any attention or anything you give them. They just are that's the way they are. I mean, they're so much. Their personalities are the ones, at least I've known, are far more impressive than most people I know. It's not even close.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
even close.
Yeah.
Dogs have personalities so much nicer than most people I know, or people you hear about in the news, especially the ones that are, the troublemakers. I mean, there's just no comparison to dogs.
So,
Dogs are so much more humane.
right. So David, before we have to sign off, I don't know, putting you on the spot a bit, but Heather asked if you were to share an issue or a topic, what might that be? Which maybe is a tough question because you're doing that all the time in a certain capacity.
Well, I mean, I'm a biologist. I have a research lab. I work at a medical school here in Louisiana, LSU Health Science Center. And I study, I do, in essence, I'm a geneticist actually. But I do cancer research. So I could give a talk on cancer. I could give a talk on DNA. I can tell you a lot about DNA. I mean, it's not necessarily the same thing as you're interested in or your passion is. But these are things I can talk off the top of my head. Now, if I can also talk about what my daughters are so involved in. As I said, Sarah has been a vegan since 13, and I guess Rachel didn't say much. She never does. But she became a vegan shortly after her sister did. So I think they were still both they were both in high school and were both flat out vegan. At that time, just like Jeff, I was an omnivore, you know. I mean, I couldn't imagine not having, you know, at least some meat for dinner, if not for lunch, even for breakfast, for goodness sakes. You know, that was the way Jeff and I were raised. But now I'm mostly vegetarian, and my wife Susan has been a vegetarian, but we eat cheese. It's not like we're vegan. But Susan's been a vegetarian almost her whole ever since I met her. I mean, so she just is a vegetarian because she doesn't like the taste of meat. That's what she claims. On the other hand, I love the taste of meat, but I've been able to give it up, and now I don't have any interest in it whatsoever. I'm talking about red meat. I mean, I'll occasionally eat fish. I still eat some fish, but I try to eat most. If we were in a bigger city where the vegan options were more available. So I guess I could talk on the vegan lifestyle because I know so much about it, even though I'm not a vegan
I
myself.
mean, you know, or a blend of some of those subjects. Yeah, I mean, well, I know your cancer research is, you know, very scientific, but there's a link to water, issue of water. I guess water really.
Well, vegan is a very direct link to water, Jeff.
Yeah, well, vegan, of course, yeah.
Vegan is, I don't think vegetarian as much because a typical vegetarian diet has so much of a dairy component. So dairy is terrible for the water issue. Maybe not as bad as meat.
That's something to talk about. I like to, you know, find out. I don't even know what, you know, about that. So, you know, that could be part of the topic about water. Like, that's new information for me. I never knew cheese was such a, or dairy was. Well, I guess it goes back to cows. So yeah, it's a direct link.
Yeah, the cow. I mean, the cows need food to eat and to
Right,
produce
right,
all
right.
that milk.
Right, right.
And
Obvious.
the food they eat is, I guess, alfalfa and
Yeah.
hay.
Yeah.
And I just read this in the last month, how much water is used to, that is one of the most thirsty crops there is alfalfa.
Well,
So, I mean, that's the kind of stuff I know off the top of my head. I would have to do a little research to look into it further. But, you know, going to all these vegetarian food festivals, and of course, Jeff volunteered at many of them in New York, Phoenix, and I think you went to San Francisco, right?
yeah, yeah.
So we heard, at least I was involved in listening to an MC at some of what they call the Apple stage, or the different, you know, names of fruits. And they had these different stages where they would get these outside experts giving talks on various attributes of the, you know, vegan lifestyle. And certainly there were people who gave talks on things like this, you know, how much better for the earth and for ecology the vegan lifestyle is. Whether you have any interest in animal rights at all, irrespective of that, is just this issue of water and the and carbon emission. I mean, greenhouse emissions from cows is unbelievable. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so much methane given off by, you know, 1,000 herd of cattle, you know, every day. Yes, they're continuously eating.
Well, for whatever it's worth, there has been 2 companies have been authorized, I think, by the Food and Drug Administration or whoever does this kind of thing, to begin selling lab-grown meat. I don't know how
I
much
think
water
that's
they use.
exciting development, and I know a little bit about that technology. If you want me to talk about that, I could do that. I think.
Yeah, I don't know how much
Lab-grown
water
meat.
that takes, but at least there are cows out there munching and farting, I guess is what happens to. So that's at least a somewhat less impact on the
Well,
environment.
at the moment, of course, you're talking about the lab-grown meat. Is what
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's just extraordinarily expensive because the technology isn't there yet. But I think if we fast forward 50 years,
Yeah.
it's going to be the main source of meat will be lab grown. I mean, I think there's I think there is improvements in how things are being done. It's slow and it's painfully slow, but the fact that people talk about lab grown meat and talk about a vegetarian or vegan lifestyle which, you know, when we were young, that no one ever, I never even heard of the term vegan.
Right.
I think Sarah was the one who taught me what the word meant. And when she was 13. So, I mean, I never even knew. And I thought it was such a strange and completely an unhealthy thing for her to be doing. And otherwise,
Well,
I
remember,
opposed it.
David,
I tried to convince her not to do that.
David, remember the lyrics from that song, Teach Your Parents Well.
All right. Yeah.
So,
Crosby, Stills, and Nash. I think,
yeah,
right?
exactly, right.
Crosby, Stills, and Nash.
Well, anyway, I would
wa-
I gotta get going shortly here, so.
Well, David, do
Heather,
you think, oh, I was just gonna say, maybe also you could teach us about DNA.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that it's something that like we've all heard of DNA and, but we don't know much about
We're all
it,
made up of it, right?
you know? I would love to learn about that.
I see. Well, it's, I mean, the link to the topic tonight would not be so obvious to me, but I mean, it's what is interesting about DNA and the appreciation for genetics is the more you know about that subject, the more you are easily convinced that there is very little difference between us and animals. Very little, precious little difference. And you know, I think this was something that you mentioned earlier, Heather, about how people look at animals as just something to eat, and that's nothing more than that. But as a biologist, one of the things I have learned, particularly as a geneticist, is this remarkable link to all life, even the simplest of life. I mean, to be honest, I tell everyone I do cancer research because if I told you what I really do, you wouldn't believe it. And you would think, what kind of I mean, funded by the National Institutes of Health at the tune of almost $2 million they're giving me to run my lab over the past 5 or 6 years. But if I told you what I really do, you'd probably say that National Institutes of Health in this country must have something wrong with it. Because what I really do is I study baker's or brewer's yeast, which is the organism that we use to leaven bread, brew beer, or ferment wine. We love it. It's even almost more important to us as as part of our lives, and even, I hate to say it, but even more important than dogs. You know, dogs are man's best friend or woman's best friend, but really it's yeast that is man's and woman's best friend. Where would we be without cake, without beer, without wine, and
Right.
without any other alcoholic beverage for that matter, or any other baked good? So that's yeast as you know it from a culinary standpoint, but yeast as from a scientific point of view is absolutely fascinating, and it's got aspects about it that are so similar to our own cells and our own DNA and our own chromosomes and genes that it actually is true that I can get insights into human disease in the research that my students and my postdocs in my lab do by studying this completely innocuous organism. I mean, it doesn't cause human disease. As I say, it's involved in the brewing industry and the baking industry and in the wine industry. But we're not interested in any of those in our research. It's not like I am studying a way to make yeast give better beer, wine, or bread. Other people are doing that, by the way. They're also yeast geneticists like I am, but they're employed by companies. They have, you know, they try to make a lot more money than I do, and they work for the big brewery. You know, Budweiser has a lot of yeast geneticists right now trying to come up with a better yeast to make better Budweiser. Or, you know, Jeff and I visited he was in Louisiana. We went to New Orleans and we visited a really, I don't know how you put it, a boutique
Brewery, like a
brewery. Is a boutique brewery right there in downtown New Orleans, right in French Quarter of New Orleans, and they were selling some kind of wacky cognac and other kinds of distilled alcoholic beverages. I don't know what else was it, Jeff. It's like
No.
what was the main thing they
That's what
sold?
it was. I mean, they,
Cognac and, you know, all these
Oh,
dessert
yeah.
wines.
no, they,
Anyway, you know, they
Whiskey,
even gave some little,
they had whiskey, rye, I mean, all this.
but it's all about yeast, right? Because at the end of the day, the guy was saying, yeah, we take this, and then the secret thing is all this yeast we put in to make our big, you know, soup, and then and then ferment it for like 30 days. It was really kind of cool, that tour we took. But I'm interested in yeast for a totally different reason. And I'd be happy to give a talk on that. I mean, because it's about understanding how genes work and how our DNA works is really, you know, what my research is all about.
That is incredible. That is incredible. And what you were saying about how very little difference we have through a DNA standpoint between us and animals. And then,
Yep.
and think about us to each other as well. Like,
Well, you and I are 90, I can tell you right now, Heather, 99.9% identical at the DNA level. There are about 3.5 billion base pairs in your chromosomes. And of the 3.5 billion, we only are different by maybe 100,000. Of course, I have a Y chromosome, so throw that one out. But otherwise, and that chromosome is dispensable, by the way. It has almost no purpose. So the important chromosomes, we have exactly the same chromosomes. You have an X, you have 2 X chromosomes. I have only 1 X, but then I have 22 autosomes, and so do you. And that's probably, and then all those 23 chromosomes, which we get from our parents, we get 23 from mother, 23 from our father. There are 3.5 billion base pairs in those 23 chromosomes. I think it's about 100,000 of those base pairs, which are the letters of the genetic alphabet, A, T, C, and G. Those are the 4 letters of the genetic alphabet. That's all you need to know. 100,000 A's, C's, and G's are different between your genome and mine. That's it, out of 3.5 billion. Now, Jeff and I, since we're siblings, obviously we're far more closely related. We may only have 10,000 differences in our DNA. That makes the difference between you and me, Jeff.
wait, the difference between you and Jeff would be 10,000. The difference between you and I would be what?
100,000.
Okay, so
And
10 times, 10 times.
10 times. Yeah, we're
Okay.
you and I are 10 times more distantly genetically than, say, my brother and I are. I mean, we're not identical.
Out of 3 billion.
We have the same parents, but we're not identical twins, of course, or fraternal twins.
So you're saying this is out of 3 billion total?
Out of 3 billion total, yeah.
This
It's
is
not,
like
100,000 sounds like a big number, but it's not big at all.
well, okay, so I always enjoy thinking about this because when we look at all of these problems that we're having in the world, like these tribalistic issues, you know, exclusivity versus inclusivity. Is that a word?
Yeah.
Exclusive versus inclusive.
Mhm.
And you look at like all of the ways as human beings that we disregard each other, that we discriminate. And then you look at the science of it and its absurdity
Yeah.
because of how almost the same we all are.
Oh,
And
God.
you're so lucky because your work, it's like where science enters that sort of Einsteinian spirit level, you know, like, you know, I mean, he was an ultimate spiritualist. He was a scientist, you know, I mean, the two things
Mhm.
ultimately go together. Because science is studying what is in front of us and studying what is as far into the expansive universe that we can't even imagine. It's all of it, you know, and it's a really fascinating thing. And I do feel that if the common man had access to the information that you've just shared with us in a very short period of time, they wouldn't be able to be, you know, bigotry would not exist. it can't exist when we're all basically the same. And, you know, you can say that we're all one and be written off as a flaky hippie, or you can say that we're all essentially one and be a well-informed biologist.
Yeah.
And so I just feel like what you would have to teach people, and Jeff, I think, you know, sign your brother up, put him on. I need to learn from you.
All
All
right.
right, I see, I
Yeah.
think I understand what you're saying, Heather. I mean, it is, it is humbling. Every time I think about this question and realize how even the organism of my lab studies, one of the reasons that it has this relevance to human disease is because it only has about 5,000 genes. We have about 25,000, and our genes are far more complicated in certain ways I can't explain easily. So it's much more than a five-fold difference in genetic complexity between us and yeast. But those 5,000 genes in yeast, guess what? I'm sorry, about 2,000 of them have direct counterparts in our own chromosomes. So 2 out of the 5,000 in yeast are central to our own existence. So I don't know if that makes sense, but I mean, even yeast is a fungus, right? It's the stuff that grows on grapes, grows on peaches, it grows on cherries. It's the mold in your refrigerator that you have to throw out if you have, if you have a fruit that you've kept too long in your refrigerator and it's got mold on it, there's a high likelihood some of it, the mold is this very yeast of my lab studies. And yet it's got 40% of its genes are the same as ours. And they do the same damn thing. And we can take the human gene, put it into yeast, remove the yeast gene, and now the human gene can take over and substitute for the